Another video, another room. You might be asking, why do you keep changing rooms? Wasn't your dorm enough? Well, the answer is when I'm traveling around in California, I can't exactly film in my dorm, unless I did it for the future. So, the compromise that I've made is being able to make these little video stations pretty much everywhere I go. In this case, I'm actually filming in my mom's office, so in case you were wondering. Anyways, let's go ahead and dive into what happened this week in Rachel's crazy college lifestyle, a full month into college that we are now. So the first thing I want to talk about is my anime class, because my anime class is always fun to talk about. Today and this week in my anime class, we got to watch the great movie Godzilla. Now, when you think of Godzilla, what do you think of? You probably think of like these big monster battles, one-on-one, mano-y-mano, people screaming and running, but most of the focus being on the monster. Well, I'm here to tell you that Godzilla is not that kind of movie. Godzilla actually turns out to be a really slow-paced humanitarian view of the atomic bomb, of all things, that largely got censored in America so as to take out parts talking about radiation and such, and to make it less bomb-centric or bomb-affiliated. And so this movie that I went into, having already seen like a few of the more modern ones, thinking it would follow that sort of path, ended up actually being this kind of slow, very introspective type of movie where you really got to learn about the characters and kind of feel what they felt. Definitely not what I was expecting there. Another thing that I did this week was, of course, go to my comparative government class. And the reason I bring this up this week specifically is this week we were talking about British politics. And so our teacher says, all right, to get you guys in the mood for British politics, we're going to play some music. And she goes ahead and pulls up a YouTube video, and of all songs, Pomp and Circumstance starts playing. Turns out it's a pretty important song for British culture and history, also written by an Englishman. And so we're all like, yes, we know this song. And she's like, you don't know this song yet. You'll know this song in a few years when you graduate, but you don't know this song yet. And so me and some other kids turn to each other and we're like, what is she talking about? And she's like, no, you haven't graduated yet, so you haven't heard this song, but it will be important to you. And we're just like, we graduated high school. For me, I even graduated middle school and had this song playing. So I'm not sure why she thought so avidly that this was a college graduation only thing. Nonetheless, she did. The next day I had that class, however, I'm expecting, I'll walk in and some other British orchestral music will be playing. Makes sense. It'll be nice and consistent, right? I can tell that you all in the audience are already expecting, no, it was not consistent. Instead of this nice classical music playing, we end up having this hard rock band music playing, tons of cussing in it everywhere, this very almost heavy metal sort of thing, and I just kind of walk in and I'm a little taken aback, and then I'm like, okay, well, I didn't expect this from my teacher, but I guess it's what I'm getting, and I'm not completely opposed, just a little, maybe a lot, confused. And so we got to start out our class that day with some very interesting musical choices. Another thing that we did this week, this time in my English class, was to write a literacy narrative. Now, a literacy narrative was extremely broadly defined, whereas you might think literacy would be something reasonable like reading and writing. Our literacy class was like, no, literacy is learning any skill that you want to learn. It's any skill or area of expertise. It's pretty much learning anything is a literacy. And we're like, okay. And so he gave us this project about a month ago, and we proceeded to do all the other stuff he was assigning us at the time, you know, all the readings and all the homework for all our other classes and all the tests and stuff for our other classes. A lot of people had a chem test this week, and it comes around time for this week, and he's like, all right, so literacy narrative rough drafts are due Friday, and we all are like, oh no. And so all of a sudden, pretty much everyone in the class goes into panic mode. And I know this because I've talked to quite a few of them outside the class, where we're away from the judgment of the teacher, who would most likely tell us that we should have started this a long time ago, but we all had better things to do. And so everyone in the class was suddenly like, have you done your literacy narrative? Have you done your literacy narrative? What are we even doing for the literacy narrative? I don't even know what it's about. Because he had given us these very kind of loose guidelines on what the literacy narrative was, and we were just pretty much confused and lost and had so much to work with that it was like having nothing at all. And so for a while we were in this little chaos, and then we came in the middle of the week and we're like, okay, we're kind of getting our stuff together. And me, like I think a lot of people, was able to manage and scrape it all together and get a semi-cohesive literacy narrative together to turn in and get peer-reviewed on Friday. And so we start doing the peer reviews, and it becomes clearer and clearer to me that these things are less narrative and more literacy. Whereas mine, much like these videos that I've grown accustomed to doing, was much more narrative than literacy focused. It was centered around a literacy, but it was definitely a story, because that's kind of the format I've been getting used to, and it sounded to me like this was the format that he wanted. Regardless, I start reading these essays and I'm like, this isn't a narrative. And then I read the second person's essay, I'm like, this isn't a narrative. And I keep commenting on their essays like, guys, you gotta write a story. I don't really care about the list of all these terms that you brought up. I don't really care about all of this. I need to see your progression, your like resilience, your conflict, and your resolution. I want to see a story out of you. But I wasn't getting one. It was just literacy. And as we all weren't about to stay after class to discuss more thoroughly, I kind of had to leave, thinking that, I don't know, these don't really seem very much like narratives to me. Now, we will see coming up if these actually do better than mine did, or what will happen. But it's just kind of interesting the different ways that people see these assignments. Most people focused on that idea of literacy that we talked about so heavily in class that they kind of forgot that second element. And I'm probably at fault too for talking too much about the narrative and making too much of a story without, I guess, diving enough into the literacy element. So we'll end up seeing how that goes, but at the end of the day, it's just good that we all managed to somehow get something together so that none of us are going to receive a 0 on a rough draft of this project that, to be honest, yeah, we should have started earlier. Another thing I had this week was the lab. And the lab is always fun to talk about because it's at the very end of the Wednesday. Actually, not the very end anymore. Now I have water polo practice on Wednesdays from 7 to 9. The interesting thing is my lab actually goes to 7:50 in the block. But as a lot of you who've taken labs in college may know, labs don't tend to take up their entire 3-hour block. They tend to be like half of it or like 3/4 or something like that. They can take up the entire block, but they don't tend to. But I go into this lab this day, and I've heard tell that it's one of those labs that takes the entire period. And at first, I'm disgusted. I'm like, I'm gonna have to be here until 7:50 working on parallel and series circuits? Who wants to do that? But then I started thinking. And the more I thought, the more I realized I really did want to be in that lab until 7:50. I was such a good student that being in that lab until 7:50 would be the absolute best thing that could happen for me because it would help me learn the most. I would get so much knowledge and be so much better and so much brighter, and I think you can sense that I might not be being completely honest right now. So the truth is, yes, I do want the lab to go the full time. However, it is not indeed because I am a good student or wishing the highest excellence of myself, but because of water polo practice. More specifically, because of the conditioning part of water polo practice. You see, the very first hour of water polo practice is a practical hellscape for me to be in. I hate swimming but love water polo. And I know a few of you out there might be a bit confused, but I just don't like the repetition of swimming, and I've also always been slow. So those two things kind of come together to make it something I absolutely loathe, even though water polo is really the only sport I've ever come to love. And so now I think you see the pieces starting to come together. If I get out at 7:50, the maximum time of the lab, that means I will get into water polo, and the only thing that I will do is the fun part, the passing, the shooting, the drills, the participation, the defense, the offense, all of that good stuff, and none of the swimming. And so I'm just sitting over here in my lab, all these thoughts brewing in my head, and I consider them all for a while, and I work with my lab partner, and I think you can kind of see that my motivation is dragging. I might not be wanting to go as fast as I have in the previous labs. And so he asked me about it, and I say, oh, well, the later I get out, the less swimming I have to do. And he's like, okay, I still want to go home on time. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably a good point. So I stop dragging my feet, and I actually make sure to do my best to go at a reasonable speed. But just as promised, that lab ends up getting out at 7:50. And much to my delight, by the time I walk over to that water polo pool, everyone has gone from their repetitious laps to passing. And I have never been so happy to see the practice going on without me. The last thing that I would like to talk about today is the swipe plan and Friday, because these two things go hand in hand. As a quick preface, Fridays are pretty calm, but this week, Friday was the day that I was flying out to California to go ahead and see my parents and my friends. And so I have a thing to leave at 3:30, and my class gets out at like 2:50. So essentially I have to get to all of my stuff together and to my ride by 3:30. And so this is all fine, but there's this second element, the swipes that I talked about. You see, I don't have a traditional meal plan or anything where I just have like money to spend over the course of the year. I have this swipe plan, which essentially means that I get a certain number of swipes for the week that expire on Monday at 4 a.m. And since I'm not planning on getting back on Sunday and desperately trying to use all of my swipes, I had to use them up on that Friday in that small time period. Because you see, not many things are open between about before 8 a.m. So I have 8 a.m. to 3:30 to use what I found out to be 7 swipes. Each swipe is valued at $10. So essentially, In between all of my classes, I had to use up a total value of $70 or I would lose it. And this caused a ton of chaos that I think I'll go over in another video along with some of my other swipe stories because it was quite an experience. To give you a little taste, by the end of the day, I was running to the store across from my dorm, picking up 9 Powerades, running back and ordering the drink from that place, running back with my 9 Powerades all the way up the stairs into my dorm, stashing them away, grabbing my suitcase, running all the way back, down from my dorm, back over, desperately waiting for my drink, getting my drink about 2 minutes before my ride came, coming out, sitting down, waiting for my ride to come, getting my ride, going in, and getting to the airport right on time. It was a bit chaotic, I won't lie, but we ended up getting through and we ended up getting on over to California where I got to spend a lot of good quality time with my friends and my family. And I'm not going to go super into that because those are a lot of their lives as well as mine. But needless to say, I had a really good time seeing everyone again, kind of reliving that high school and all the way back into my past life that I've had for a little while and pretending I didn't have college problems. It did feel a little bit like I had a 2-day visa into my past, and I won't lie that expiration was hanging over my head like a ticking clock I couldn't ignore. But despite that, I did get to spend a lot of good quality time with people that I really enjoy and love being around, so I'm really thankful for that. So that being said, if you're watching this, I'd just like to point out that you are either one of those people that I extremely enjoy being around, or you're just someone that enjoys being around me and hearing my stories, and that means a lot. The fact that you would actually take time out of your day to watch these videos, as I've reiterated numerous times, is absolutely incredible to me, even though there might be few of you. I value every single one. And at the end of the day, I hope that you guys soar high and enjoy the ride of life. And have a great day. Bye.